This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. Have negative impacts from all the craziness of life affected your job, maybe a relationship, maybe your social life, or maybe your overall well-being? If that's you and you're struggling through the pains of addiction or alcohol addiction or a mental health disorder at that, now's the time to seek some help. Why wait? This can be an opportunity to get back on track and find the real you. You're not alone in this. I promise you that. There's so many of us out there who have gone through it. Promises Behavioral Health is here, and they can help you find a path. Now, we've worked with Promises for years. We know their teams personally. We have great relationships with them. And most importantly, we trust Promises, and that means you can too. To learn more about Promises treatment options near you, you can go to promisesbehavioralhealth.com/soberguy. That's promisesbehavioralhealth.com/soberguy. Or you can call 888-205-1890. That's 888-205-1890. Tell them that you heard about them from That Sober Guy podcast.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. Our guest today is Matthew Ganem, and Matthew is a father to Christian and Peyton. He's a poet. He's a recovery advocate, and he's also the CEO of Aftermath Addiction Treatment Center. Matthew has struggled through his own journey with addiction, and he's here today to talk a little bit about that, talk some recovery with us. I'm excited to hear his story and share it with you today. So sit back, relax. We're going to get to Matthew in just a minute. First, are you tired of drinking? We have a 30-day program designed to help you quit drinking for 30 days or more. It's called Quit Drinking Dude, the ultimate men's guide to quit drinking alcohol and stay sober for 30 days or more. You can check it out right now. You can get the entire 30-day program. You can use the promo code 50% off when you go to quitdrinkingdude.com. So you can check that out. Getting a lot of good feedback on the program there. Lots of good dudes in our locals group as well. You can follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. And you can join us in our Sober Guy men's group on the Locals platform. Go ahead and download the Locals app, or you can go to thatsoberguypodcast.locals.com. And once again, all the links from today's podcast will be in the show notes. You can contact Matthew. You can get in touch with him, and anything we talk about will make it easy for you to go in there and click those links if you'd like to follow up. All right, Matthew, it's good to be with you today. Good to have you on the podcast all the way out in Massachusetts, from Massachusetts to California and back. We're talking recovery. We're both rocking the Boston hats today, even though I'm an A's fan. I'm more of a baseball fan, so I just love baseball, and I do like to watch some Red Sox baseball too. So, yeah. How are you, man? It's good to have you on the show.
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's an honor to be on the podcast. Very blessed, very grateful to be here. You know, hopefully we can inspire somebody with my story, a little bit of background, and maybe even share some poetry for you.
Oh, I'd love that. I would love that. Absolutely, man. And maybe let's start there then. Why don't you give us a little background about yourself so those listening can get to know you a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So my struggle started with this this very, one of my biggest struggles was trying to fit in, trying to be a part of, trying to be accepted by others. I had this fear that if I didn't follow suit with whatever my friends were doing, that they would, make fun of me, outcast me, kick me to the curb. And when we started playing sports, I was playing sports every single day. I was trying to get better. I wanted to be the best at what I did. And, ultimately my journey to IV, heroin use, homelessness, and all that started with a cigarette. We were walking to school. It was a group of us. We walked every single day to school. My buddy Sean stole a pack of cigarettes from his mother. One by one, handed us each a cigarette. And I didn't have that, I had that fear that if I didn't do this, they were going to make fun of me, tell me to kick rocks, and, outcast me. So that unspoken peer pressure, I lit up that cigarette, coughing my lungs out on the corner, thinking we were cool kids, and just following suit with what we did, with whatever the group of friends that I was hanging around with did. And that right there followed me from the next step to drinking, to smoking weed, eventually to ecstasy. I got kicked out of 2 schools my freshman year. And then when I was a junior in high school, I got introduced to this drug called Oxycontin.
Oh, wow.
And, at the time, we were doing other drugs, ecstasy, calm down. I'd feel suicidal on the calm down. There was like some sort of consequence or whatever. Drinking really wasn't my thing. And then the struggle to get alcohol was always tough. You have to get somebody with an ID, go to the liquor store, whatever. But that first time I tried an OC80, it was like, it was like heaven. And again, peer pressure led me to it. Not the, hey, Matt, you do this or we're going to beat you up or make fun of you. It was, we were at a house party. Buddy broke it out. He said it was like taking a couple of perks. And one by one, we all did it. And when the time came for me to do it, I didn't have that courage to walk away. I couldn't say no. And then that feeling that I got was like pure euphoria.
Wow.
It gave me that feeling that I could go fight Mike Tyson. I could go hit on the hot girl at school. Like, it was like everything that my life was missing. And at that point in time in my life, my mother had already thrown me out of the house. I was like a real trouble kid. My father had left. So, I was partying. I was a little out of control. I was getting in trouble at school, fighting, winning some, losing a bunch, just trying to cause ruckus and chasing like this type of chaotic lifestyle.
Yeah.
And, when we first started doing OCs, it was like a Friday, Saturday thing. And it was easy to get them because a drug dealer isn't going to card you. They're not going to ask you for your ID. As long as you have money, they were cool with it. And, Friday, Saturday turned to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, turned to splitting a pill on Monday, to hustling one up on Tuesday, to all of a sudden I'm doing this drug every single day. And for a while, it was fun. It was like a blast. Like everybody that I hung around with, every kid I grew up with, like we were all doing it.
Yeah.
And when I first tried it, like nobody told me like you're going to turn into a heroin addict. They never said I was going to be homeless or in and out of jail or programs. They didn't tell me about the consequences. You never hear about that. And then on top of it, when people did say, hey, I heard such and such started doing dope, I was like, oh, that's only that person. That ain't me. I'm never going to end up like that. And then there I am in detox, for the first time, kicking OCs. And like, I always, you look at the dope addicts and the older dope fiends were like, oh, kid, you don't want to end up like me, heroin addict. And I'm like, I'm never going to be like you. I was a better than addict in those places in the early days. Like, you shoot heroin? That's filthy, disgusting. You're a junkie. I'm better than. My pill habit got out of hand, or I sold drugs, right? I had this like severe illusion that I was a tough guy in the streets. I had a name, I had a reputation. I sold drugs. I was a stick-up kid, and I used to live and thrive off of that. But it was the drugs. The drugs gave me the confidence to do a lot of things that, like, as I get into my story further on, like early on in recovery, that once you remove the drugs from me, I was a scared little boy trapped inside a young man's body. But while I was ripping and running, I was off the wall, willing to do whatever. But the first few times I was in detox, I would look at that dope fiend like, oh, you're that disgusting junkie. And then the next time I was in detox, there I was sniffing heroin, but I was better then because I sniffed it instead of using a needle. I'm never going to go to a needle. And eventually I ended up using a needle. And I was a monkey that sold bananas. So the entire time I was getting high, I sold drugs. I hung around with a lot of older kids that used to think live by this code, or that they were looking out for me. They were trying to help me out, when in reality I was their guinea pig to profit off of, to go send me out there and make money. And then when I was selling, I was doing all my profits. It wasn't like I was even, like early on I had some things. I had some materialistic things. I had an apartment. I was 18 years old with the first person in like my group of friends to have an apartment. It got raided by the OC task force. It crumbled fast. It happened really fast. And when I was 19 years old, after my apartment got raided, I was sleeping on my best friend's couch. It was September 1st, 2004, and I woke up, and his mother was screaming, and he was hanging in the bathroom. He was hanging in the bathroom. He committed suicide. And I ran in there, and I grabbed him, and I took him down. And, it was one of like the most traumatic experiences that I've ever had to go through. And, what do we do in those times when we get such pain, is we go and get high, because that's what's normal to us. And for the period after that, I was on like a suicide mission. I got high. I started committing crazier crimes. I progressed from doing OCs to heroin, to shooting heroin, to smoking crack, to shooting crack. Ultimately spiraled out until I was alone. I burned every bridge around me until I was on an island. I didn't talk to any of my friends or my family. My father and my mother were sick and tired of the times that I reached out to them and apologized, but I'm sorry, but can I have $40? I'm sorry, but can I stay at your house where you wake up, I'm gone with your jewelry and your checkbook? You know, like I always had some sort of condition attached to any apology I had, to the point that they stopped answering, right? And like my friends, I didn't have any. I thought my drug dealer was like my best friend. Like he was the only one that would pick the phone up like, yo, Boppy, I need $2 brown.
How old were you by this point?
Kids.
How old were you by this point?
I was 19. Damn. I was 19 when I started doing dope, 19, 20, 21. And fortunately, when I turned 21, I've been in jail. I had been in and out of programs. When I got to these programs, a lot of times, like being 19, being 20, I was the youngest kid there. And I was 130 pounds soaking wet. And I had court issues. So a lot of times I was stipulated. I would get through the door of the halfway house, look around at like grown-ass men that are like mid-30s, did jail time, and be riddled with fear that in fight or flight, I would just take off. Like I wouldn't even drop my bags. Courts can catch me, put out the bench warrant. Like I'm off ripping and running. I'll take my chances there. And ultimately, you know, I was getting high with my best friend. Me and him was sleeping head to toe on a futon in South Boston, getting high with his mother. His mother had just done 5 years in prison, and we were paying rent by giving her heroin. And Eddie ended up getting into a halfway house. And he knew at that point, like I was on a suicide mission. I would do everything I scored that day with the hopes that like I passed peacefully in my sleep, because I was too terrified to pull the trigger when I held the gun to my head. I was too terrified to drop when I had a belt around my throat. Like I was scared to kill myself, but I wanted to die every day. Like I would wake up and be like, man, I got to go through this again. Crawling out of my skin, pissing out of my ass, like literally dying inside. And yet here I have to go peel my fucking flesh off the ground to go chase another bag of dope, to go lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, like do whatever it takes to go cop this bag of dope so I wouldn't feel sick.
Yeah.
And my boy knew this. So every day he was telling me, Matt, you got to come in here. This is such a dope spot. I was so sick that I went and visited him at this halfway house with his sister, jammed out of my mind, nodding out, like group of guys trying to get their life together. And there I show up, blood coming down my arms from just shooting up, nodding out, looking like a loser. Like I was so selfish and self-absorbed. I didn't care about the consequences or anything or anybody other than using. And, you know, I ended up being dope sick for a couple days. His mother's shooting up in front of me. And I'm on the futon, probably haven't showered in a week, didn't brush my teeth. Oh, and she turns to me, she goes, Matt, you got a fucking problem. You need to go and get help. And then she proceeded to stick the needle in her arm and get high. And I remember I went into the bathroom and I just, you know, over the years, you try to make sure you look good, your hair, you don't got bad head, you know, you don't got shit on your teeth, but you never actually take a look at yourself. And it was the first time that I looked in the mirror and I just saw death staring back at me. And I couldn't even tell you who that person was, who that person became. And like for that moment, that brief moment, I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. And I knew if I kept up at the pace I was going, like I was going to end up dead. Yeah. And I ended up getting into a detox from there. Very fortunately, I ended up in that same halfway house that my buddy was in. And it was like one of the hottest halfway houses in Boston. It was a TC, and like you were either paroled to that program or it was the last stop before jail. And like I got in there as a 21-year-old weighing 140 pounds. Family wouldn't talk to me, had no friends at this point. Like I was just completely defeated and broken. And the guy gave me a chance at a bed. He ended up showing up to court for me. Now I was in like the court system since I was a young kid, young teenager, 14 years old. And like I had some clean time. I've been on maintenance before, you know. I had some other things that happened. Like I had a baby that didn't end up being mine after I got released from prison. So like I had like a long history in the court system, and I grew up with my original PO. I grew up with his son and his two nephews. So he always looked at me as like that 12-year-old that played baseball, basketball. Like I got every potential break. And finally he gave up. And, you know, ultimately the guy Bob Brown that ran the halfway house went into court and was like, let's give this kid a chance. He's 21 years old. He's got his entire future that we could, put him as a statistic in the system where he's never going to get out of the grip, so we can give him a chance. And the Judge Flynn was like, all right, we're gonna try to work with him. And ultimately, I ended up completing that halfway house, 6 months in it. Now, when I first got in there, coming off of drugs, like I said before, like you remove the drugs, all that confidence, that street kid, that I'll fight anybody, all that's removed. Here I am with guys that are 35, 36, 10 years in prison, all jacked up. And like one of the struggles I have is communicating. So I couldn't go to that guy and be like, hey, buddy, I'm having a hard time. Like, you want to talk about it? And one of the things that I would do is I would write. I write poetry. I wrote poetry when I was growing up. When I was banged up on OCs, I thought I was going to be the Tony Montana, the Oxycontin game, big time drug dealer, rapper, and ended up becoming useless when I started shooting heroin. But in early recovery, we get hit with all the shame, the guilt, suppressing a lot of things like the trauma, losing my best friend, all these emotions and feelings come rushing back to you. And a lot of it is like, how do you deal with it? Well, we usually get high when we're trying to deal with it. So what I would do is I would write poetry and I would write pieces as my way to get like that anvil that used to sit on my chest to try to relieve that. I would put my thoughts and my feelings and experiences down on a piece of paper. And ultimately that ended up being like one of the biggest therapeutic tools for me in staying clean. I completed the halfway house, went through a sober house for 18 months and kind of like hit the ground running, trying to like take on the world. Because honestly, when we were younger, like there wasn't somebody who had 5-10 years clean preaching like, hey, you can do this. You can turn your life around. Like it was usually the old drunk guy that was like miserable with his life, that would like speak at like high schools and do the DARE program that just didn't work. Like that was the only thing of recovery that I ever knew. And, I started redeveloping like the passions that I had. I started playing sports again. And then, over the period of time of being clean, poetry ended up being like this platform that took me across the country. I put out a book in 2011 called The Shadow of an Addict. It started opening up doors of opportunity. And, I speak at like high schools, middle schools, just trying to show kids that one, it's not cool to do drugs, not cool to try to follow the in crowd. And I try to talk about, kids becoming leaders, be a leader instead of a follower. And, and through my sobriety, through the poetry, I ended up getting opportunities to work in the field. And, I've opened 2 different treatment centers. I was a small owner at the last one that I ran, and I opened up Aftermath in 2020. Nice. And for a kid, a knucklehead that never had any college education, a convicted felon, that I hustle, I work hard, and I have an ability to connect with people and try to put the right people in places. And I've been able to thrive. And every day I wake up with a purpose. I get to see the life come back in somebody's eyes. That person whose wife doesn't want them around, that kid whose parents are like, I've had enough. Like you can connect, just through like the pain. Like I don't ever forget the pain that I went through and what I had to experience to get to where I'm at. And right now where I'm at in life is I have 2 kids. I got a beautiful 8-year-old daughter who's just like me. So she's the devil, troublemaking Sour Patch Kid. I got a 13-year-old son that's going through puberty that I have full custody of because of my recovery, because I was able to show up when the time came, which is crazy in Massachusetts. Like it's very difficult to get custody as a single father of your child. I'm the CEO of Aftermath. I own my own house. I own 2 sober houses. I get to go around and share these little words that rhyme that I put down in a notebook on, everything that I've been through, what I've been able to overcome and face adversity. Even in recovery, like, being able to bounce back. One of the things recovery has taught me in getting clean from heroin addiction is that you can't put something in front of me that I don't think I can overcome. Yeah. I'm going to get through it, around it. I'm going to do whatever it takes time and time again to be able to succeed. And that goes from when I was in the halfway house to the sober house to renting a room in a rooming house to my first shared apartment to my own apartment. Like, we're not supposed to be where we're at. I'm not supposed to be talking to you across the country We're supposed to be a statistic. We're supposed to be dead. I remember going to places and them telling us the odds, right? You got a 5, a 10% chance you're going to be back here. You're going to overdose. You're going to die. You'll be back in jail, Matt. You're going to be nothing. And here I am still standing, smiling, trying to inspire that next person like, yo, this isn't about statistics. You can do this. You put the work in, you're going to get the results. Yeah. You surround yourself with good people. You find something that you can, whether it's NA, AA, Smart Recovery, Refuge Recovery, like whatever you can find that you can center yourself and build that foundation, like, and you put the work in, you're going to thrive in life. And people in recovery have some of the biggest skill sets of anyone, whether it's like, I have a bunch of friends that own businesses, construction, plowing, treatment centers, sober housing. I got musicians, actors. Like, I mean, we have some of the most talented people once we get out of our own way and start using that same type of hustle that we use to get high and put that into something positive.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really try to push on people. Like, don't limit yourself on like, all right, I'm just going to stay clean and that's it. Like, obviously in early recovery, that's huge. That's big. But like, recovery isn't just about trying to stay away from drugs. It's about thriving in life, living a life that's full of purpose and waking every day grateful and never forgetting that desperation that led us into the halls, into the program, into recovery. And that's something, I don't ever want to be homeless, sleeping in Boston Common ever again. Like, I am all set. We're going backwards. I don't want to sit there and see my kids through a plexiglass window in jail because, I fell off and went right back to like getting high. Because when I get high, I end up homeless and end up in jail. I don't care what successes I have. I'll burn this whole thing to the fucking ground.
Yeah. Yeah. You have purpose, you found like, we were talking about that in a meeting last night about finding your why. Like, what's your why? Like what motivates us? For a lot of us, it's just pure desperation. For some of us, it's a mix of a lot of things, desperation, our kids. I know for me, I had the feeling that God had something more for my life. Like I could feel it. And I could also feel that something really bad was about to happen if I didn't get some help too. But man, dude, thanks for sharing your story, man. I know it's hard to put a lot because I know there's probably a ton more to it.
But there's a lot of detail. Yeah. When we're looking at a time restraint, I'm like, how do I blast through this? And I
was going to tell you, you did a really good job of going through it and shifting gears though, and giving us like a really good picture of that. And I had a couple questions just from what you shared already. So the first thing that I thought of was, I have yet to hear it out of the words from somebody else, almost the exact same thing that I've written down and said before too. And that is that I was a scared little boy trapped in a grown man's body. Like I felt so much like that. And I think I would guess that there's a lot of other dudes out there who, when they can be honest with themselves, they probably feel the same way. So
absolutely.
What was your take on that? And maybe you could dive into that a little bit more, and maybe speak to someone who.
When I was younger, you can't show weakness. You can't show vulnerability as a man. We can't, like, we're ingrained to man up. No, don't feel the feelings or man through it, whatever. And the neighborhood that I grew up in, I looked up to a lot of tough guys, a lot of like street guys that sold drugs, that did this, that, and the other. Yeah. So looking up to people like that and being around them, wanting to hang out with them, I emulated them. So I had to put on this facade, even when it was just dabbling in drugs early on, before it got to Oxycontin, where it was full blown, like thinking I was this big bad drug dealer. Yeah. And you kind of live off your reputation, right? So when I was using and I sold, women wanted me, people wanted to be around me. You don't realize that it's not for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I was delusional back then because I thought loyalty meant something. I thought, you just have a different perspective when you don't know. I'm looking back I've been clean now 15 years, coming up on 16 in April. So I look at things in a completely different perspective, because even in early recovery, I still clung to this like, the war stories and the scars. I got stabbed. Somebody tried to kill me. Like I used to live and thrive off these, hardships that I had when I was using, where now as a father, as somebody with the amount of time, I'm like, that kid was delusional. He was such a knucklehead. He's lucky he made it out. and to never try to put it on a pedestal, because I know, like, not only are the drugs that we're addicted to the lifestyle, we're addicted to the women, fast cars, fast women, everything that surrounds it, where it's like we were just trying to fill this hole, fill this void. And, you know, the drugs really gave me this like artificial confidence that like I walked around with my chest out and I was this big badass. And I promise you, when I was in that halfway house and I was looking around at the dude that just did 10 years, that was 6'5" like this.
Damn.
That tough guy shit was like, all right, dude, how we doing? I'm Matt, you know, trying to get my life together, you know. But on the streets, I'll look at somebody that big, like, all right, I got a bat, I got a knife, I got a gun. I'm gonna come at you in a different way. And like, you remove those drugs, I'm not doing that. You remove the drugs, like part of what I did to support my habit, I held up corner stores. Like, I was known as a stick-up kid, and I loved that people knew me as that, because like, people were scared. Me and my best friend, he's dead now. He got murdered in 2017, Dougie. But me and him would walk into a party and people would be like, oh, they coming in to take something. And that, like, you know, that ego, it fed the ego.
Yeah. And
like, you remove those drugs, there's not a chance in hell I'm running up in a store. I ain't stealing a candy bar no more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just the spiral that I was on, the area that I was from, the things that we were getting involved with, like, it was like a culmination of like using street life, having to be on edge around everybody, and needing to have that bravado just to survive. It's like that survival instinct is that I'm not going to show you a weakness. If I'm selling drugs and you think there's any fear that's inside me, you're going to come and try to take what I have. And I can't have that. And again, like, I was young when I got clean. I was young when I first got into the program. I promise you, I was a terrified little boy. Even if I didn't like spell it out for people, I was riddled with fear trying to get my life together in the early stages, especially how people looked at me, how they viewed me. If I expressed how I was feeling, are they going to look at me like I'm weak? You know? And fortunately now, like, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I don't worry about the opinion of others. I can look back at those things, especially when talking to young kids that are just trying to get it. Like, I've been there. I've been in those shoes. And you know, there ain't really crazy stories. We can, you know, we all share crazy things that we've done.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're covering up a lot of things that have gone wrong, some traumas and how we feel inside. And I'm not ashamed to be able to show who I am now compared to where I was back then.
So if you could speak to a dude out there listening right now who maybe he's going through the ups and downs of getting, you know, back and forth. You went through some of that yourself. Obviously, you've shared a lot about it. You know, and I know I kind of shared that same thing, waking up in the morning, swearing up and down, I'm going to get my shit together, and then being right back in the same place within a couple of hours. And like that repetitive, it's almost like Groundhog Day, and you feel shameful, you feel angry, you feel lost. Like maybe you're over it, you know? What do you usually say to other men out there or young kids too, teenagers who might be struggling with the ups and downs of getting on some sort of firm foundation to like a good path to recovery?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times in those situations when somebody's been in and out, you know, sometimes they have tasted like a little bit of recovery, you know, and I try to just explain, like, both recovery is hard, also getting high is hard. It's draining, it's difficult. And I try to break it down in the most simplistic terms of like what led you to try to even get help. Clearly you want to get help if you're trying, right? Yeah. So now it's like, well, how do you achieve recovery? How do you support the difficulties that you have? You got to raise your hand. You got to get uncomfortable. Our comfort zone is getting high every day, you know? So you have to like try to raise your hand at a meeting, express that you need the help, you know, talk about some of the things that you're not willing to talk about. If it's not NA, it's AA, it's refuge recovery. It's try something that you can find some sort of common ground with people that you can have as a foundation. And then it's really about, you deserve a better chance at life. And that, you know, ultimately like drugs and alcohol put us in a grave. Like that's the end result of our use in jails, institutions, and death. Yeah. And the fact is recovery is a hell of a lot better life when you're not struggling, kicking dope, drinking your life away at the end of the bar, smoking it, sticking everything that you love in a pipe. Like, when you can separate yourself from that and give yourself the chance, like, life is so much more beautiful than it is when we're using. And you'll be able to achieve things that you can't when you're getting high. Yeah. You're not going to get the big house and a hot girl when you're sticking a needle in your arm and you're smoking crack. Like, you're not going to have that happy ending. And you're not going to ever fill the void. You know, you're never going to heal whatever it is that you're struggling with a drink or a drug. It's just temporary relief, but all the chaos that comes with it still comes with it once it wears off, and once when you're sick and kicking, everything you suppress comes back to the surface.
I love that you're never going to fill the void, you know, because a lot of us have past hurts and trauma, you know, go down the list of things, the victim mentality, and we're trying to cover up by using a substance and numb out, not feel. And the moment that I was able to stop doing that and start to almost thaw out a little bit, you know, my consciousness was numb to reality for so long. Like, it literally, I think that's why we say, like, well, he's, you know, if you see someone who really suffers, like with alcoholism, for instance, they're stuck at 18. You know, here's a guy who's 59 years old, but he's stuck at like 17.
Never grew.
It just never grew, man. He just got stunted, and we became stuck there. And I think what it does is it not only does it stunt our growth, but it peels us back from God's path that we're supposed to be on. So you were stuck in a spot at one time where you were at the bottom of the bottom, but God had this other plan for you to go out and speak to kids and speak to other people, other men, start a treatment center. Like, you were stuck in this spot at one time, man, and you let that go and was able to go off on the right path. And anybody can do that, but we just have to make a decision, and we got to do it. You know, we need some help, but we got to make the decision on our own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's the thing. We can offer all the help in the world to somebody if they're not willing to put in that work and be accountable. Because a lot, like you said, the victim mentality, it's a lack of accountability, right? We blame everybody. For the longest time early on in my drug use, it was my mother's fault for throwing me out early. It was my father's fault for leaving. It was this girl's fault for cheating on me. It was this girl for doing this. This is why I can't commit. This is why I struggle with that. It was always everybody else. And when you start being accountable for your actions and the part that you play and how you handle your reaction, you know, you get to progress a little bit further, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, because as I've gained in time in recovery and try to be more accountable in everything, situations, arguments with friends, business decisions, I try to look at what part I play in it, and you know, trying to show the people, especially early on, like, when you're accountable, you can't be a victim. You can't blame everything else for why you keep going back to drugs. You're never gonna get sober. You're never gonna get clean if that's the case. When you're pointing the finger at everybody else. Yeah,
that's good, man. Were you doing poetry before you got clean, or so you were? So here's the question I have for you, because I have a music background too, man. Played in bands, write all that kind of stuff. I love it, but it's different for me today than it was when I was still using. And one of the things I had a hard time with was connecting back to that once I got sober, because it was a different space that I was in, like trying to write, trying to play guitar, trying to like be creative. That's actually what led me into podcasting, because there's a lot of creativity that goes into this too. But it was hard to transition into that. Did you have a hard time transitioning into doing poetry again, or was it different, or what did that look like?
I mean, for me, I write with pain. When I experience pain, I have a harder time lately with writing because life is so good compared to like when I have extreme pain, it flows and my pain just comes out. And so I like wrote when I was a young kid, like probably second or third grade. I would write little poems that rhyme. Like, I was a terrible student, but that was one thing that I always enjoyed doing. I got like published. I couldn't even tell you where it was published, but my teacher had submitted a poem early on, and it ended up getting published or whatever. Yeah. And through my youth, I dabbled with writing. I would stop, and then with using, and like I'm like a hip hop head. I love music. It's a really good outlet for me. It's something you can just drift away and just like relatable. So I would write, and then I started rapping. And again, I was high and delusional, thinking I was some badass. So I was like, you know, King Kong on a mic and all this nonsense. But one of the cool things is I still have notebooks from that period of time. I have poems from when I was first in detox where I write in it how I'm not an addict. I am not a drug addict. I struggle with that concept very early on to admit that I was powerless over this disease because it wasn't as bad at that point. And what's funny is you go through the progression of that book. It goes from me not being an addict to me wondering why I sold my soul for a bag of fucking heroin and why I like literally put everything I loved and cared about in a cooker, you know, like it's crazy. When I got clean, that's when I started writing again. Cause everything just flew. It was just like, I was just so emotionally unraveling at the time.
Had a lot to talk about.
I couldn't, I would bite my tongue because I was so fearful. And even like the house was a really difficult house that I went through. So just for an example, they had a table where we did our groups in, right? 26 guys in this house. Okay. And you sat according to seniority. So when I was early on, I was at the front of the table. And if you were there for like 5-6 months, you were at the end. So Bob Brown he was running his groups and he would ask a question. I remember I raised my hand one time to answer and he goes, "How long have you been in this house for?" I go, 3 weeks. He goes, "Shut the fuck up." I moved on to the next guy and I'm like,
I love it.
I was ready to run out the door. Like I ain't talking to nobody. This is too much for me. I can't deal with it. So like I immediately shut down when I get uncomfortable, but I would just jot like my thoughts down in little poems. And whether it was about the group, whether it was about the day, that was just like, it ended up becoming like this huge outlet. Yeah. And I used to like read my poems to my friends because I lost my license for 5 years for a Class A distribution charge I caught. And I would be driving to work with them and I'd be like, "Oh, I just wrote this. You need to hear it." And they had no choice because we were in the car together. So I would just blurt out the poems and they were probably sick and tired of my shit. But they were like, "Oh, Matt, you got some talent. You should put it out there."
Yeah.
And then it went from there to like, I started sharing poems on Facebook, started finding out that there were these things like open mics to go to. So I started hitting open mics all the time. We getting the wrap it up.
Oh no, you're good. I was just, my daughter was just coming out. They're headed out to school. So she gave me the "I love you" sign, which is just great.
Dope.
Yeah.
But, so I started hitting open mics up. And the first time I ever performed, I did a poem like this to the crowd, reading through it because I was terrified. I was shaking into a crowd of 4 people, and I knew 3 of them. Terrified.
I love it.
And in 2018, I performed in front of anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 people on stage at Recovery Fest at McCoy Stadium. Oh, and nice, dude, I do this call and response poem called Miracle, where I say IMA and the crowd chants back Miracle, and the entire stadium was thundering.
Oh, wow.
And I had this smile ear to ear of like, talk about a cool journey, a cool moment in time is like, I've been in the recovery community in the treatment world for a while. I've been really in the trenches and trying to like speak up for people that can't as an advocate, clashing with politicians, hosting rallies. I put together nonprofits and Somerville Overcoming Addiction that spawned out to like 30 or 40 different communities from there that each had their own little pocket. I really try to lead by example and show people that they can do it and try to put a twist on this, that it's not just meetings. Like we have recovery basketball tournaments, cornhole tournaments. We have, game night at a recovery center. Like we try to come at it from a different way. And advocacy, the poetry, it was like a culmination at that moment of like a lot of work I put in. And there was a lot of people in the crowd that like have followed me for a long time. So the whole day was like, Maddie, you helped me get into detox 5 years ago, or I'm still doing good, or I'm over here, or, I'm so proud of you. Like you come so far, like you give us all hope. And, not to like try to speak on an ego tip, but it's like, it's a very rewarding thing to put that type of energy out there, put that type of, to try to do enough good. And like, it's come back in spades for me. Yeah. Like I have my network of friends, like everybody's pretty much in recovery. I went through like a real hardship now about 18 months ago that I thought like my entire world came crashing down. And I've just been supported. Like I was carried through some of like my hardest times by people that love and care about me. And it's not about, Matt got money, so let's use him to score. Matt's not my drinking buddy. He's not the guy with the connect for dope or crack. Like, they were there because they genuinely love and care about me, and they know that that's the same type of love and affection I try to treat all my relationships with. And, it's cool. I've lived like such an absolutely insane life that if I told my knucklehead 21-year-old self, hey, this is what's in store for you, I'd tell you to go fuck yourself. It's not happening.
Yeah, no way. It's unbelievable, to some extent. How'd you start Aftermath? So,
I had worked for another place. I got into treatment about 8 years ago. A kid that I played sports with growing up had started in like the treatment industry and got me a job into it, and changed my life. I was working construction, barely getting by. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with one of my best friends, his girl, and their daughter, and my son had to sleep in my bed with me because that's just all I could afford at the moment. And he pulled me out of there, and I work hard. I try to help people, regardless of their background. I try to do what I can to put them in a position to succeed or get them into treatment. And opportunities started opening up, the doors of opportunity. And I started working with this guy who invested in me, gave me the opportunity to build something up from the ground up. In 2016, I was able to do that, changed my life. It was a life-changing experience, so that's something I'll be grateful for regardless of my feelings towards it. I ran a program for 5 years, built from the ground up, developed a great relationship. We were, though it's treatment and we were, clinical groups, like, trying to help people get better. We were of the community. We sponsored a bunch of events. We showed up to every recovery event, deep, our alumni, like we built this community. And in 2020, unbeknownst to myself, I got stabbed in the back and painted as somebody that I wasn't. And unfortunately, all that got stripped away from me. And it was very heartbreaking because that was like my baby. That was, it was like a make or break moment when we got started. I remember sitting in the office when it was empty thinking like, this is my shot at success. Like, this is how I'm going to change my kids' life and their future and be able to do some things that, I never had the opportunity. I have no business education other than selling drugs and some books out of my car.
I gotta say though, some drug dealers, man, that's the best entrepreneurs.
Looking back, we have the best education, and we actually have applied knowledge, not like what they teach you in school. Like, school can be a detriment to some people.
Now, let me just be clear: neither one of us are advocating selling drugs either. For someone out there listening, what the fuck did he just say? Drugs. No, but the concept and the entrepreneurial spirit of that, when we apply that to something good, take away the drugs, man, we can do really anything.
We can do some amazing things. So I ended up thriving when people didn't necessarily think I was going to succeed. I put a lot of my friends on, like a lot of my friends in early recovery who are now making very good money in positions of directors and different positions in other facilities. Like, it was like a good launching point. I gave people that, had criminal backgrounds with the chance. And we formed this like great, we had this great thing that was going on. My former partner isn't an addict, is not in recovery, and is a very, he's business oriented. So unfortunately, he came in, tried to pin a lie on me and kind of blackmail me into signing some documents to give over my ownership. Fortunately, I'm not a dumbass. I didn't sign anything. I told the lawyer to kick rocks and ended up leaving. But it was a bad breakup in business. It was a harsh learning experience. I thought I had a friendship with the guy. I thought we were like, I thought it was more than just like, oh, you make me money. Now I have no use for you, and I don't think your value contributes to this. So I'm going to remove you, and I'm going to do it in such a way. I'm going to paint you out as a thief. Yada, 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 spread, false rumors about me that there was no background to it. Fired my best friend who's a single mother in the middle of a pandemic, fired another good friend of mine for their loyalty to me. Ultimately, 15 people walked out. They said, I'm not working for anybody but Matt.
Damn.
Like some deep loyalty. And then some people had to stay. I never told anyone to leave because ultimately it was me and this one guy's dispute. I'm not letting you lose your livelihood and the way that you provide for your family or your life. Like that would be selfish of me, regardless of how I feel towards that situation. But after that, 3 hours after a meltdown, I'm like tatted up. I live in like a suburban neighborhood now. So I'm in my yard screaming, sweating, flipping out, saying who knows what for like a 3-hour meltdown. And I immediately went into the house, hopped on a computer, filed for an LLC, Aftermath Addiction Treatment LLC. The name is for obvious reasons. If you can understand that story, this is the aftermath of everything that just happened to me. And as a writer, our logo's a phoenix.
Oh, and, nice. That's a cool shirt.
Rising from the ashes. And I use that as a writer, as a huge metaphor in a lot of my writing.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I can't be a victim, right? Not saying that I didn't have doubts and insecurities over that journey, but I was like, all right, that's how it's going to be. I have all the knowledge. I gained all the knowledge on how to do what I was doing there. Now it's time to apply it for myself. And
so you had to trust, and you had to show a lot of trust and a lot of faith. Letting go.
I bet my entire life on this being successful. I borrowed against my house. I took a personal loan out.
Yeah.
Wow. I had some other people trying to partner up with me that fortunately I took the hard-headed way out of I'm doing this on my own. I'm never going to be in a situation again that somebody's going to take food off my kid's plate ever. And the community in Massachusetts rallied around me. Right after it happened, social media in our area was like set on fire. Matt's, never not answered the phone. He's always been there to help. Literally they rallied around me. So I'm going through this like emotional turmoil through it. And I got people showing me just showering me with love, showering me with support. I had people that work for the state reach out to me being like, you've always been an amazing figure in the community. What can we do to help? And we ended up getting the fastest license ever issued in the state of Massachusetts. Wow. That happened July 2020. We were open by October 2020.
Damn, that's fast.
Crazy turnaround. And, I got to do it with a core of people that I love and care about that are like family to me. I have such an incredible team over here that,
is it
a
just
lot of places don't stand out.
Men, or is it co-ed?
No, it's men and women.
It's men and women.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of places are kind of like copy and paste. They're pretty much the same. Like our staff is what really separates us. Everybody in here is in recovery. We all have that learned experience, and we all come from different backgrounds. And like we're able to treat from the Wall Street multimillionaire corporate to like that lowly street level drug addict like myself. And everybody in between. The single the married wife, stay at home mom that drinks. It's a beautiful team that we put together. But I'll tell you, in that time from when that happened to opening up, I had some really soul searching moments of, whether it was giving up, not necessarily getting high, but wanting to take the edge off in some sort of way, of the doubts. Like, is this going to even work? I started questioning, was it them? Was it me? Like, what really drove what we were just doing? I started questioning our approach on treatment, because a lot of what we do is love, and you can't quantify love in a matter of data-driven treatment, where like we try to build people up instead of break them down and show them that like they can live a better life. And
what was the one thing that did it for you that changed a lot of those doubts and that voice in your head just going like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
everybody I talked to and tried having a sob moment was like, shut the fuck up, man. You're going to be successful.
Just like
I'm like, but I'm hurting right now. Like, I'm going through it right now. Can I just express that?
So that was too, because wasn't it the first one, Bill Brown? Was that his name? He said, how long? Bob Brown, how long you been here? 3 weeks. Shut the fuck up.
Well, I'm telling you, that's what it was like. I would try to vent to my friends and they'd be like, shut up, Matt. This shit's going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. And that's ultimately what came out of it, is that one of the worst days of my life turned into the best. Like, beyond best day of my life was the day that happened. And I always had dreams of branching out on my own, but I got forced into a corner. And when you put me in a corner, back to the ropes, like, I'm going to come out fighting. And that's what happened. Like I fought and I clawed to get to this point, and I'm fortunate that we had a team with the same mentality, and we just, we pushed through. And that's something I try to show people. Like, even in recovery, you're going to get hit with adversity. I'd have a tough conversation with my son that, like, I know we live this beautiful life, but like, we might have to sell the house. We might have to take a step back through this. And also trying to show him how you respond to adversity, because that's how character's made. It's easy being a front runner in life or even in recovery. A lot of times when everything is going great, what happens? We can skate through. But how do you respond when shit hits the fan? Are you in those fight or flight situations? Are you going to fold, or are you going to keep pushing forward and overcome it? And that's like getting clean from dope. That gave me the belief that I'm going to get through it. Even though in those moments, those ups and downs and those soul searching moments of just like, yo, is this going to work out? Like, where, what's going to happen? Am I going to have to move? Is everything going to come crumbling down? Did I make a bad decision because I had people that were willing to invest instead of like putting it on my own shoulders and literally pushing the chips of everything I've accumulated in life into the middle and saying, hey, I'm gonna live with the results of this. I'm going to live with how everything plays out.
That's so tough too, because I know that there's that fear of impending doom sometimes that can just get us, man, and can just overtake us, especially when we've got a lot of stuff riding on it, family, financial stuff, our own recovery itself, and getting through that. I think that's a good point you made. A little bit of tough love, but also also support, loyalty, trust, like having a good group. Like, what's that old quote? You're gonna be like the 5 most people that you hang around. So who are you hanging around? Because that's gonna show me your future. I'm paraphrasing. I know I jacked that all up, but
But that's so. I know I said they were like, Matt, shut the fuck up. You're gonna be fine. They were still there. They still listened to me and my meltdowns, and they supported me. And like, if it wasn't for my network, I don't know where I would be. And that's like one of the things I emphasize. You are who you surround yourself with. That quote you were just talking about, you hang out with 9 successful people, you're going to be the 10th one. You hang around with 9 bums, what do you think is going to happen? So I try to surround myself with people that like, that contribute, that bring something to the table, that have solid recovery, that I can trust, and that I can go through and be vulnerable and admit that I'm weak and admit that I'm scared, and not have that same type of feelings that when I was getting high, I had to get high in those moments because I had to cover it up because I couldn't show you. I couldn't express that I was going to be vulnerable, or that I was scared, or any type of weakness, where now that's not, fortunately for like the group of friends that I have, I don't have to like hide. I don't have to hide who I am. I can be who I can be, my true self. And that's a blessing.
I love it, man. All right. So I got one last question before we wrap up, and before we find out how we can get in contact with you and connect and all that good stuff. And I know this is probably the hardest question we've had to address today. Top 3 hip hop artists of all time. Go.
Top 3 hip hop artists of all time. Tupac.
Or at least your favorite. You could do your favorite as well. Okay.
Tupac's my favorite artist of all time.
Yeah.
I'm a big M fan. Eminem's one of my favorite artists. I love, like, when he starts rhyming, I don't ever want to write again. It's crazy. And then for third, it's hard to judge like a top 3 for me.
Just for everybody listening too, Matthew had no idea I was going to ask this. So this is totally on the spot, which that's why I said it's a really hard question.
I enjoy different artists. Like, I love Nipsey Hussle. I regret that I didn't know about Nipsey Hussle before he passed away. I got into his music more after he passed, and like the mentality he brought to the table is amazing. 50 Cent. When I was in high school, 50 Cent was like, that's what we wrote out. What we wrote out.
What about Gangsta?
And DMX. DMX is probably my third. That would be my third favorite artist. And I mean, I'm fortunate. I was blessed with knowing him on a personal level on top of it. So he'd probably be my third. Yeah. So Tupac, M, and X. X was like raw and authentic, and one of the most genuinely good people that you would ever come across. Yeah. And I mean, but there's other, like Jay-Z and his business mentality. I love 50 Cent. I actually just read a book that he had wrote that was just like the mentality of business and his approach, and like how the street, I don't know. there's different things from different artists that I enjoy. I like NF. NF's a dope artist.
Oh yeah, he's good.
I love the fact he don't swear. Everything is just, it's raw. From my area, Slane is like a good friend of mine. But he's like an incredible lyricist, underground hip hop cat. He's been in movies. He was in The Town.
Yeah. It's a great movie, by the way.
Yeah. Robert. Yeah. It's an incredible movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I'm always trying to listen to some new stuff. I listen to some old. I don't really like the new hip hop. Yeah, they mumble and talk nonsense. And they really dress fucking strange.
Yeah, this shit is very strange. There's not a lot of lyrical like content.
No,
it's just like the same thing over and over. And
it's a beat. You loop the same fucking phrase. Yeah, and you try to catch a dance with it, and you hope that you blow up off a single. It's not like lyricists. There's not like one of the things about Tupac that I love is he had so many ranges of different emotions and how he expressed himself. And like you're angry 1 minute, but then you're writing "Dear Mama." You're talking about a girl, keep your head up, or hey. You wonder why we call you bitch, like, and then breaking down, you probably shouldn't be doing those things if you don't want to be called these types of names. You know what I mean? Like the wide variety of his the perspective on life. Yeah. For him, like he really touches me. X is raw emotion, and I love that aspect. And like Jay, one of the best quotes I ever heard, my boy Iggy, when he started watching me perform, he had told me about an interview with Wale and ESPN's First Take. And they were like, oh, you're like one of the number one performers. And he was like, nah, Jay-Z is. And the reason why is that Jay-Z doesn't have to do all this crazy stuff. He can sit behind a microphone and 1 million people will hang on every single word that he says. And all he has to do is this. And he captures anybody that listens to him. So the way I perform in crowds is I want you to be able to hear a pin drop. Yeah. I want to like capture you and have you so focused that like the entire crowd's silent. And that's like something, that for my performance style, like the emotion, the rawness that I try to bring when I perform, was kind of related to that you hang on every word when I perform.
Did you want
to emulate it because of Jay in that way?
I don't know if you're up for this. It's cool if not, or if so, did you want to share a little bit of the poetry before we take off today? I would love to hear it. I'm sure those listening would too.
All right. And patiently waiting until the smoke clears, tightrope walking between insanity and serenity. I wonder if I can find hope here before the rope tears the last thread of my misery. I can't escape the fog. The hands of failure grab hold of me, choking me, expose the broken me of what I was supposed to be. A wrong turn at the fork in the road. Now I can't turn back. Will the door of opportunity close, or should I make my own path? I knew I shouldn't have sold that. A trip away from this foolish paradise to a place where angels with clipped wings make guitar strings sing into the afterlife. For my soul, the devil wants to know what's the asking price. My fall from grace is quicker than slipping on black ice. Still searching for solid ground, spiraling and falling down. Is it really my calling now? Does it still make my heart pound? Standing on stage, staring out at the crowd. But it's nothing but empty seats. Do I do it for them or do I do it for me? Do I do it for peace or do I do it to be free? Just breathe. Because I want to take your breath away. Well, I welcome y'all to my palace of shame and introduce y'all to my marriage to pain, carrying the shadow that I battled to change. And the war was ugly. I rose from the ashes of a junk. Used to load up in the bathrooms at Dunkies. Now I'm getting high at the crowds in front of me. Like the applause of fix only fit for a druggie, so I take a hit off the people screaming they love me. And for that one shining moment, these dark skies become sunny. I forget about the nights I was alone, roaming the streets with no place to go, no place to call home, raising a broken child on my own, and you wonder why I got stoned. Chemicals numbing my sharp senses. How many nights is a park benches? A story that's heart-wrenching where I start venting. The ghosts of my past coming back for vengeance. Syringes saying use me, and you won't end up back behind barbed wire fences, but I'm against this. So I pull a piece of paper on and let my pen bleed for you to remember me. Even if my physical presence is deceased, yes to my being will never leave. Inside these words, please cherish me, for my soul to be set free is more than just a memory.
Bro, thank you. That was sick. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff, dude. I love it. No,
it was funny when I first started performing. I get on stage talking about shooting dope and smoking crack. I would step off stage and they would split from me like the Red Sea. Like I was still going to steal their purse. And, I thrive off of like spite, I guess. And I got this chip on my shoulder for motivation purposes,
Yeah.
So keep
Lost
trying
you
to
there
push
for a
through
minute.
it.
There we go. Okay, I thought I dropped for a second.
You froze a little bit,
bro. Yeah, thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed this conversation and getting to know you.
We went a little bit over the time frame.
We did, but man, it was just going so good, man. I just said we'll roll with it, man. I really enjoyed it, and I know a lot of other people out there listening are going to enjoy it too. Where can folks reach out to you? Where can they find more info about you, about your poetry, about Aftermath?
I got a writer's page, Matt Ganem the Poet, on Facebook. You can look my name up on YouTube for a bunch of videos and performances that are out there. On Twitter and Instagram, it's Matt Ganem _poet. AftermathTreatmentCenter.com is our website. There's Facebook.com/Aftermath Treatment on Facebook for that. It's at Aftermath _treatment for Instagram, at Aftermath TC on Twitter. And, reach out, shoot me a message. On my writer's page, I'm constantly putting up stuff that I've written in the past, stuff that I'm writing in the present. So if you like some of that performance piece, there's definitely.
Oh, lost you there. Are you back? Uh-oh. You there, Matthew? I think we had a little drop on the internet connection there. We'll see if Matthew comes back in. If not, I'll just go ahead and wrap it up. We'll make sure that we'll make sure that we put all the show notes, all the links today in the show notes, so you'll be able to find those there. It's aftermathtreatmentcenter.com, facebook.com/aftermathtreatment, and then at Matt Ganem _poet. You can find that on Instagram, and at Aftermath _treatment as well. Yeah, I don't see that Matthew's coming back in. So, man, what a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed that today. I hope something spoke to you. Man, you can follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. You can also join our Sober Guy men's group on Locals. If you're tired of drinking, head over to quitdrinkingdude.com. You can check out the 30-day program there. Good times, man. Always fun. Always good. Shout out to Nate for setting it up today. Oh, there's Matt. He's back in here with us. There he is.
Somebody must have unplugged the Wi-Fi in the office.
I was wrapping it up, but everyone knows how to get in contact with you, man. Just thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, bro. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, bro. It was a dope moment. Cool to share.
Thanks, brother.